Shalom and welcome to today's Middle East Report. In this programme today we'll be discussing the rise of Jew hatred in Britain and Europe. Warm welcome to the programme, and today I have a very famous guest. He's a playwright, he's an author, and also a journalist. Tuvia Tenenbom, warm welcome to the Middle East Report.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure to be here, and hello to the viewers, to the people watching it. Thank you all. Hope you're all having a great time.
Fantastic. Now, it's quite a coup for us to have you on the programme because of your excellent work, really, in exposing Jew hatred where you find it through your books, through documentaries. So it's for us, it's a pleasure to have you on the programme too.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Can we start off with your background? You were born in Israel. Share with us your life growing up in Israel.
I was born in Israel in a very Haredi, ultra-Orthodox community in Bnei Brak. I grew up. My father was a rabbi. My grandparents, going for generations, rabbis. And I grew up there. I studied in yeshivot there, in yeshivas, whatever you call it in English, and rabbinical seminaries. I was going to be a rabbi. And then one day I decided to go the other way, and I moved, I served in the Israeli army, and then I moved to the United States. I spent about 15 years studying all kinds of things in different universities. I founded the Jewish Theater of New York, and I started doing also journalistic work. This is one of the things that I studied in university. And I have been writing for the German media, for paper Die Zeit for many years, and also an author for Surkamp Verlag, which it's one of the latest whatever German publishing companies. And I've been writing for them so far 4 books, and now I'm in the journey of writing the 5th book for them. 3 of them became Spiegel bestseller, so I'm very happy about that. And I'm doing my journeys on the books with my wife, Tuvia Tenenbom, who comes along with me, and she does so many wonderful things during the journeys.
Fantastic.
So, and then the idea of each and every one of the books is going to a country for 6 months, and it's all commissioned by this German publisher, and the idea is they pay the expenses, they pay everything, they commission it, and the idea is you go to the country 6 months, do whatever you want to do there, and then after 6 months or 7 months, whatever it depends, come to us with a book, and that's it. I mean, there's no strings attached, they can do whatever you want to do. And so it's a lot of freedom here to do whatever you do.
I mean, you're famous very much for the plays you write in the Jewish Theatre in New York. So what made you decide that you want to move away from theatre life, writing plays, and to really write books about the rise of anti-Semitism and to catch people out who hold
I'm still doing theatre. Nothing really changed. I mean, the theatre that I have been doing was not kind of musicals, escapism, all the time, political and Jewish. It's Jewish Theater of New York, so it's political Jewish theater, all of them based on research, and almost all of them about the current political issues. So move from one thing to the other was not that hard because they are so related. And also, I mean, the idea of writing books did not come from me. I've been writing for some time, what is this, in 2010 or something like that. I've been writing already for some time for this German paper called Die Zeit. And an editor in some publishing company called me up and said, Tuvia, would you like to write a book for us? And that's the way it started. The whole journey of writing books did not start from me. It started from publishing company, I really like what you write in the media, your articles, because usually I write about culture and politics. And the idea is, can you come? Can you go to this country or that country, spend there a few months and write a book for us? And that's basically what it is. I mean, it's not like I asked for these books to be written. You know, I didn't even think about writing books, but it came, and thank God they are successful. I mean, a lot of people buy them.
And Tuvia, this is the first book that we're going to talk about that you've written, called The Lies They Tell. So can you share with us about this book? I love the cover. I love the cartoon and the graphic design as well.
Yeah. This was done by a guy named Shai Charka. Shai Charka is an Israeli cartoonist. He's one of the more famous ones, and he's extremely talented. I really like it. His work features in most of my books. He's really good. The Lies I Tell is about a journey. You know, my publishing company asked me to go to the United States and spend the time in the United States, 6 months, which partly I live in the United States, part of the time I live in New York City, in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, which is a beautiful place. And I thought always that I know New York, you know, because I've been living there for so long. But then came the idea to write this book, you know, and it took me on a journey to the United States. I did it again with Hizzy. It took me to a journey to the United States for 6 months, 7 months, whatever it was at that time. And the countries that I found out was totally different than the country I thought I knew. I mean, the United States, I thought that country I know. I mean, it's going to be like water to write a book about it. But I've been living, as I said, in the Upper East Side. You know, it's like a lot of Jews live there. You know, it's also, and it's a bubble. You know, it's a New York bubble, but it has nothing to do with America. And the America that I found out was a very different America, totally different America, segregated America. I found a lot of things places that I could not believe exist in America of our time, like black ghettos and stuff like that. Frighteningly. You know, places to be, frightening places to be and explore. And I also saw, sadly, that United States is known, you know, to be the most Israel supporter and most pro-Jewish. But I found out that this is already on its waning days. The pendulum is moving, meaning America becomes more and more anti-Israel and also anti-Semitic. I mean, you know, this is sad part to watch and see. Even in places that traditionally you would expect, you know, especially from what the media tells us, you know, like evangelical churches,
yes,
you would expect them to be pro-Israel. And you see the divide between the older people, the older generation, you know, who are very, very pro-Israel, call Israel the eye of God, you know, something like that, you know, and saying we'll protect them, you know, protect Israel, protect the Jews, whatever it is, to the children, you know, who already go with Free Palestine and stuff like that, or even evangelical churches, as they say, you know, which was very disappointing because I talked to the young people and they basically told me about what you probably know what it is, you know, it's called the replacement theology, you know. Once upon a time, you know, the Jews were the chosen people of God, but they are no longer the chosen people of God. They are the curse of God. And we are in Texas, you know, or wherever it is, you know, or Mississippi, we are the chosen people of God. And
well,
it's like it's the pendulum is moving.
Yeah.
And you see it. And when you see it, it's tough to look at it because as a Jew who knows history and knows the history between our two religions, you know, that should have been like brotherly or sisterly, you know, and for 2,000 years, it's been a story of murder for the most part. And you hope that here in the United States, the change is coming, you know, because in at least the older generation, and then to see that curse of hatred coming back into the churches. That was one of the toughest things to watch, to witness.
I can imagine.
But this is a reality.
You've also written a book about called Hello Refugees, about the Syrian refugees entering into Europe and that big crisis of 2015. Do you want to share with us
I can share what
you found in that book?
I can share with you about that. You know, during the refugees, against the idea of my publisher to go and because Germany has accepted, for example, between 1 million and 2 million, depending how you count it, you know, refugees, you know, mainly from Middle Eastern countries or stuff like that, you know, in the past couple of years, I mean, the past 3-4 years, whatever you say. So in the middle of the refugee crisis, you know, I mean, or the refugee issue, going into 16-17, you know, they asked me to do this, and I went again with Easy. And we went to refugee camps, and the idea for me was, I mean, I thought it's a great idea, you know, that here you come and the country that was so Germany, with that history that killed and slaughtered, you know, the stranger amongst them. And here they come and they say, welcome, stranger. It sounded so good. It sounded so beautiful. And I was actually happy to do this. And then we went to see actually the refugees. We went to the camps of the refugees. And because my wife and I speak Arabic, it was easy for us to penetrate the camps, even though security would not allow you to walk in. But we'd wait for some of the refugees to come downstairs. We talked to them in Arabic, befriend them, and the refugees would go to the guards and tell the guards that the uncle from Aleppo and his wife came, whatever it is, you know, and that's how we walked in. And then to see how the camps looked like. It was frightening to see how the camps looked like. I mean, most of them, not all of them, but most of them. Just imagine, you know, it was like in the heat of summer, really, really, really hot. You're talking about 90 degrees Fahrenheit, I don't know, something like that. And they are in this hangar, for example, in Berlin. That's a lot of little rooms, containers, as they call, or thousands of people who are spread around in hundreds of containers. And containers basically kind of, imagine it as a little room, you know, and bunk beds on each side, like 4 sides, and a very small area, like a couple of feet, you know, shared place. And they are made from plastic or from whatever it is, you know. There's no window, there is no air conditioning to speak of, no fan. And then when you go, you see the toilet, they showed us the toilet where they live, and you see toilets, doors broken, no cover, toilet paper you have to take care of yourself. I don't know where you find it. Dirty, and in the toilet places where the sink to clean your hands, you press it or you move it and nothing, you switch it and no water comes out. People live, the food was like horrible food. I tasted it. This is like you wouldn't give to animals. And it was frightening to see a nation that prided itself of opening the door to the stranger. Actually, what they did was treated them like wars and horses. You know, I mean, one refugee camp, the refugees called me up to go where there is a sink, you know, and they open and the guy opens the sink and brown water comes out, and they ask me, is everybody in Germany drinking waters like this? It's like, what am I supposed to say to them? But what for me was even more interesting, because it's like one day with the refugees, that's what he did. One day with the refugees, one day with the Germans, you know, more or less, you know, trying to divide the time between. And I expected to hear a lot of anti-Semitic stuff from the people coming from Syria. You know, Syria has been in war with Israel forever and ever and ever. You know, Iraqis, you know, all these people. And I heard very little anti-Semitism from them. The most anti-Semitism stuff that I heard was from the white people, from the Germans themselves. You know, horrible things about, you know, it's like you didn't even talk about it. It's like they just put in the Jew. Or like one told me, for example, you know, everybody else, the refugees, everybody, except guess what? The Jews. You know, everything was the Jews. So it was interesting to see what I expected to see anti-Semitism, you know, in the Arab community, the Middle Eastern community. I saw very little, but in the other part, there was no even reason to talk about Jews, but the Jew was always inserted, you know. Like they would say to me, we are the least racist country in the world, which is racist by itself, you know. We are better than everybody else. Look at our record of human rights. Look how we treat people. We are the opposite from Israel, which treats people, you know, Arabs. They are subhuman country. You know, the way you treat people. I mean, it's like always just insert the thing Israel, anti-Israel. So that was very, very interesting to see that.
I can imagine. Yeah. And the book you wrote called Catch the Jew is your most famous one, isn't it?
Catch the Jew is, I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
And what was the main feature and the main focus of?
The main feature, again, I mean, I was born in Israel. I thought I knew everything, but, you know, and I read Jewish papers, Hebrew papers in English, whatever. But Israel frequently, I mean, almost daily, I would say. So I thought I knew everything, you know. And initially, I didn't even want to go there. I said, what am I going to add to something that already everybody knows, everybody writing about Israel? But what I found in Israel, what was interesting to me, what I found in Israel, was when I left Israel 33 years before coming to write a book, you know, when I left Israel, there were two tribes in Israel. There was the Arab and the Jew. When I came back to Israel, I found another tribe, a third tribe, and that tribe was the European. The place is flooded with Europeans, not tourists. They don't go to swim, so to speak, in the Dead Sea. They don't go to those places. Very few, you know, but most of them, what I found them, they are human rights organizations, members of human rights organizations. And they have come to Israel supposedly in order to encourage love or peace between Arab and Jew, and friendship between Arab and Jew. But I infiltrated these organizations one by one, and what I found out was a totally different thing. And that was frightening. They really hate Jews. They have come to the Holy Land for one purpose. So that if they catch one Arab who still has any friendly terms with a Jew, convince him or her that the Jews are not worthy of any trust. Because the Jew is a thief by nature, a murderer by nature, a rapist by nature. These are people who are dressed very nicely. Imagine the people the way here we are in London, imagine in the city, the business people all dressed nicely, nice suit, nice tie, you know, men and women all dressed like so professional, they look so beautiful. Inside, it's all poison. And they have come to Europe, fly thousands of miles to spread their hatred of the Jew where the Jew lives. That was frighteningly amazing. And I also infiltrated the Palestinian, at least the high echelon of the Palestinian society, like Jibril Rajub, you know, the master spy of Palestine, I would call him. I mean, there's a way he's called. And it was amazing. We became very, very friendly. He didn't know that I'm Jewish. He thought I'm a real German, you know, a Nazi from his perspective, you know. And I saw that, I can tell you, even the most moderate Palestinians, I sadly will tell you that there is no chance for peace. They don't want a Jew anywhere near them. So it's a legend, it's a myth that there is possibility to make peace between Arab and Jew in that. It's just not going to happen.
So let's have a look now at Tuvia being interviewed by CBN on his book, Catch the Jew.
Anti-Semitism is alive and well in Europe, with attacks in France and Austria doubling since 2013. This year has been marked by attacks at a kosher supermarket in Paris and shootings of Jews in Copenhagen. The new book, Catch the Jew, has been a #1 bestseller in Israel. It claims Europeans are fanning the flames of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict by exporting that anti-Semitism to the Middle East.
There is not only Jews and Arabs here, the way I thought fighting it out. There is another tribe here, and the tribe is called Europeans. Some Americans, but mostly Europeans.
Author Tuvia Tenenbom says European governments back organizations that claim to help Palestinians, but their true goal is to create friction and chaos.
In reality, they have come to this land to implant and instill hatred in the heart of every Muslim against the Jews, and also sponsor self-hating Jews to catch the Jew doing something wrong, to declare the Jew evil, and to end the story of the Jews being here.
Behind me is an Israeli checkpoint. It marks the crossing between Israeli and Palestinian areas, and European groups send monitors here. They're hoping to catch Israeli soldiers doing something Europeans don't like. For 6 months, Tenenbom and his wife Miriam interviewed hundreds of Israeli Jews and Arabs, Palestinians and foreign aid workers, asking about their jobs and beliefs. Paid by a German newspaper, Tenenbom posed as a German and hid his Jewish identity. In the eyes of Palestinians and internationals alike, being German, they thought, made him a kindred spirit in the hatred of the Jews.
This is Bedouin land, we shall not be moved.
He captured many examples on video, like this Palestinian, Atef, a top researcher for the pro-Palestinian Israeli human rights group Bestselling. The group documents alleged Israeli brutality against Palestinians. Atef says the Holocaust never happened.
Because we're Germans, we support the Jews. But ask him if he remembers that we also killed them.
It's a lie. I don't believe.
You don't believe it?
Tenenbom challenged Bestselling.
I want you to retract the reports that he signed on. How can you believe a guy, how can you trust a guy whose research has found that there was no Holocaust?
Another example involves Casa per la Pace Milano, House for Peace, a group backed by the European Commission. It brings young Italians here for what it calls peace education, to see firsthand the situation in Israel and Palestinian areas. Yet some of that education comes from tour guide Itamar Shapira, who describes himself as an ex-Jew and speaks against Israel. During a tour at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial, he compares Israelis to Nazis.
And this one is a very known massacre that happened here in 1944. That is called Bir Yassin. It used to be a Palestinian village below these houses and trees, a Palestinian village of a few thousand people. And about 170, 120, 400, again, a fight of the numbers, of Palestinians were killed over there.
The museum fired Shapira as a guide, but he continues to conduct private tours. Tenenbom's German connection also gave him access to Palestinian leaders like former security chief Jibril Raju, considered a Palestinian moderate. He told Tenenbom that even Hitler didn't know how bad the Jews are.
Yeah, my question to you was, do you think the Israelis have changed? Excuse me, let them not to change. Let them not to change. Israel will be isolated. Israel will be more than South Africa.
Hanan Ashrawi is a Christian Palestinian, yet she wouldn't talk about the existence of a Jewish temple here. Her former boss, Yasser Arafat, said the Jews never lived here.
Of course, no, the Jewish tribes were here, but they weren't, a state the way they claim it to be.
It was not a state.
And I don't.
Was there
I believe there was.
Was there
a temple in Judea, Samaria, or whatever. I have no idea. I'm not an archaeologist.
Tenenbom doesn't blame the Arabs. He lays the guilt squarely on the Europeans who pay them. Tenenbom, whose grandfather was murdered by the Nazis, has this message for the Jews.
I don't want you to die. I don't want you to disappear. Fight back. And be brave about it.
John Wagi, CBN News, at the Adarot checkpoint near Jerusalem.
Excellent report there put together by CBN. I think that very much explained what you were talking about earlier, Tuvia, about exposing these NGOs and the attitudes of the Palestinian Authority to Israel and the Jewish people. But you're here in Britain for 6 months, and tell us about your latest project that you're doing, researching British attitudes towards Israel and the Jewish.
So now the current project, which I'm in the middle, and is the UK, 7 months, I don't know yet, in the UK. And we actually started in Dublin, before you go into the old thing, Northern Ireland, and then hard border and soft border, and you have to get some feel for these two Irish places, So Ireland, Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, I'll put them together, Ireland, and then Scotland, and England, and then Wales. So, started in Ireland. I thought I knew Ireland, I knew Irish people, because in New York you have a lot of times, you'll see Irish people and Jews, Irish Americans, doing things together, like cultural, whatever it is. And I thought I knew them. I came to Ireland, and and I found a totally different Ireland, different Irish people, and that applies for both the Republic of Ireland and the Northern Ireland. I liked them much more than I thought that I would. I didn't like them much in New York. I liked them much more than I thought that I would. I found Irish people to be very passionate people, you know, warm people, and sadly, very, very anti-Semitic. I found Ireland to be the most anti-Semitic country I have been to so far, thus far. Wow. And I've been to quite a few countries, you know, even Arab countries and European countries, of course, you know. I mean, we are talking about Germany, Poland, you know, Hungary. I mean, it's like, you know, all this anti-Semitism there. I found Ireland to be unbelievably anti-Semitic. It's like, it just comes out of them for no reason. It's like frightening. We went one time, we went like in Derry, for example. We went into a pub, and the way that people say, you know, the Jews are the curse of the earth, you know, whatever it is, you know, it's like, the only thing Hitler did not do well, he did not kill all the Jews, you know, and you have this accent, Jews. I was like, you know, it's like, it was amazing to see how much, I mean, I remember like at one point, you know, and we're just walking on the street and I saw these 3 young Irish people, looks like students, and I stopped them and I said, may I ask one question? Can you tell me, at what age exactly did you start hating the Jews? I mean, were you born with this kind of hate? Does it start at age of 2, age of 3? So imagine, you know, if you ask normal people this kind of questions, you'll say you are out of your mind, right? And it's like, and then I started to think, and one of them said, with me it started at 14. And the other one said, yeah, something like that, maybe 15. So it's like this hate of the Jew, this is like fighting hate of the Jew. And then I found it also in Scotland to a different level. You know, they don't have all these flags or whatever it is, but to a different level. But also strong hate of the Jew. I'm not talking about Israeli, the Jew. And even if you go to those places, you know, like for example in Glasgow, you know, and you have like Buchanan Street, whatever it is.
Oh, yeah. Cannon Street, yeah.
You know, which is basically shopping, you know, and center. And on Saturdays, you know, you have all these stalls, some political, you know, and I find like 4 stalls, whatever, with Palestinian flags. And you go and you talk to the people, and you expect to see, you know, all kinds of organizations, Palestinian Security, what is Solidarity Campaign, PSC or SMESC or KKC, whatever it is. Whatever, you know. And no, there's also one Solidarity Campaign, Palestinian Solidarity. And you talk to them, and you expect to see Arabs, but no. For the most part, at least, they are Scottish people, normal Scottish people. You know, nothing to do. The only stall that I saw really Muslim was the stall where you can get a free Quran. You know, it's like you walk in, you want the Quran, you can get it and pick it up and go. And they were Muslim, you know, and they talked about Islam. They didn't talk to me about Israel, they didn't talk to me about occupation, they didn't talk to me about anything. The ones who talked about, you know, the apartheid state called Israel, you know, is Scottish. And then we come now, we are in the middle of the way, we are in England. England, oh God in heaven, God bless them. They are the most polite people on earth. There you will not say a bad word about anybody else. Of course not. They'll just do it. Or without talking about it. I mean, it's hard to find out what the English people really think. But if you become closer, you know, they'll share with you. And in a polite way, in a beautiful way of as they use English, and I really like it, you know, the way I've never met anyone using English so beautifully. I mean, it's like I'm impressed. I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed. But the hatred here is very, very deep. You know, it's deep, even without saying it. For example, you go to Oxford. You know, to Oxford University. And in Oxford University, nobody will say one word against anybody because, you know, we are all the same. Or also say, I don't know anything about it, you know. But look what Oxford Union, was a debating team. Look at the people they put there. It's like within a span of half a year of 6 months, you already put 2 Palestinians, because they championed the Palestinian cause, obviously. And they put also the Malaysian president, prime minister, the guy who said that the hooked-nosed Jews, whatever, like horrible anti-Semitic garbage, trash from the Middle Ages. And he is stubborn that he has the right to say those things in democratic society. He can say whatever he wants about Jews and the worst thing. And they give him, this is the people they give podium and publicity and whatever it is. So you can see it slowly, the way you talk to people, and then to see all these things about what happens here in labor, all the anti-Semitism in labor, and the person who stands on the top of it, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn. And to see that, and on the other hand, to see that the Jews, maybe they made one demonstration one time, they are so afraid to say anything, they are so afraid to fight back. Here is a guy who tells them, the leader of the Labour Party, which is a liberal party, he basically says about the Jews that they have no sense of British irony, are here with us, all their lives with us, and they have no sense of British irony. And the guy has done God knows how many things against Jews, And I couldn't find one Jewish leader, who would say, for the record, forget off the record, they would say that, on the record, to say that Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite. So we have this kind of anti-Semitism that's deep, and that the society allows it, because obviously he's still the leader of the Labour Party. Nobody's taking him away, and if polls are to be trusted, if there were a snap election right now, Labour would get 40%. And despite the fact that this guy is a rabid anti-Semite. I mean, imagine if he were anti-Muslim. You don't get 40%. Not in this country. But if you are anti-Jew, you can do whatever you want. So to see that kind of anti-Semitism, around, and it's put very beautiful, it's like very, very nicely, there's English politeness, you never scream. It's like, it's beautiful. I mean, sometimes I like this politeness. I love to see the English people and the way they stand on line, this endurance of this patience, of not, like in the Middle East, like in Israel, it's like you stand on line, it's like everybody is jumping on the same thing. It's like,
absolutely.
You stand on line, they have this patience to stand on line. They can stand there for hours. I love that. I mean, I love a lot of things in this country, but to see that anti-Semitism, to feel it,
So where do you think this is stemming from? Because if you look at
latent anti-Semitism, it's something that's
hatred of Israel,
hatred of the Jew from God knows for how long. I mean, it's underneath. It's underneath. Yeah, it's like what is this Darwin place? And then I meet a guy who was just walking. I mean, it's like he asked me for a cigarette, whatever. No, for a cigarette, for a lighter, whatever. And we started talking. And it is a young man, just finished university, a very educated person. And he tells me that he's a very independent thinker. He thinks about it, he examines everything. And I say to him, do you have anything in international politics that bothers you or makes you think about or you care about? Yes, he cares about the Palestinian issue. He cares about this kind of stuff. So, what do you care about? Oh, Israel killed 40 children, in one day, 40 Palestinian children in one day, this. He has all the details. Then I ask him, okay, very interesting. Can you tell me anything about Kurdistan? He says, what? The Kurdistan, the Kurds? Sorry, I don't know anything about it. Can you tell me anything about the Chechens? You heard about them? No. Do you know about what happens in Turkey these days? What Erdogan is doing to his own people? Not familiar. So I was asking him another question. I said, he doesn't know anything about any trouble spot. I said to him, tell me why do you know about Israel and Palestine and you don't know anything about anything else? You know nothing about any other place in the world. And he was like an interesting example. He was like a really honest guy. And he says to me, you know what? I never thought about it. But you are right. There's no other issue I care about. And I make research, spend my time investigating it, the Israeli-Palestinian issue. And yes, and it's a very small part of the world, you're right. I really don't know why. And then he goes and he says to me, but I wanted to know, I'm a guy who doesn't take anything for granted. I investigate everything. For example, he says to me, the Holocaust thing, I don't really know if it happened. There is no proof that Hitler asked to kill the Jews.
Ooh.
These things come out of a person on the street, very nicely dressed, very well spoken. Believe you me, much better accent than mine. And then you ask yourself, where do we get it from? You tell me.
I don't know. What I do find is that there is a shocking rise of anti-Semitism in this country, particularly as regard to Israel, and a lot of it is fueled around Israel, and it's primarily the media's portrayal of the conflict, which then stokes up emotions against Israel because the truth's not being told. Which then fuels that hatred against Israel and then against the Jewish population here.
And I can tell you, the other thing is, you know, it's like we are all talking about the media, but the main thing the media wants to do, especially now in times, there's no government media, I mean, more or less to speak of, a little bit maybe BBC, but supported by the government, it's not the government. The media, what they are concerned about is selling. You know, selling either papers or getting people on their websites or whatever it is. The media will feed you, the audience, you know, us, whatever, who you want to read. The media is not going to feed us what we don't want to read. The Guardian is not going to feed the readers, you know, with anything positive about Donald Trump because, for example, in international politics, because the people are against Donald Trump. You know, the media will feed you what you want. If the media feeds a lot of anti-Semitism, guess why it is? Because there is demand for this. By the end of the day, it boils down to a pound, to the money, to the dollar, to the euro. The media gives the people what the people want. That's by the end of the day. I'm sorry to say that. I'm part of the media, and I know that.
So from what you're saying and what you're discussing as well, seems to be the impact of the kind of liberal left and its attitudes towards Israel and the Jewish people that seems to be...
The liberal left, you know, basically betrays its own principles.
Yeah, we know that.
The liberal left is supposed to be, you know, equality for all, you know, no difference between any race and any religion, any faith and any thinking and whatever it is, and any philosophy. We are all equal, we are all one. That's the liberal left. That's the way it's supposed to be, the liberal left. Anti-racist, you know, and human rights for all. But in that formula of anti-racist human rights for all, one race is excluded, the Jews. One human right is excluded to the Jews and to the state of Israel. That's what's amazing about what happened in our day and time to the liberal left. It became the most racist against Jews, the most poisonous against Jews, much more than even the extreme right. The extreme right doesn't have good writers like The Guardian. The extreme right doesn't have good writers, you know, like the liberal left. The extreme right don't send their children to study journalism and to study writing. And they don't know much, the extreme right. The extreme right are just in their bubble of extreme right.
So one thing I have to ask you, what are the consequences then? I mean, you've been in the States, you've been in Europe, you're now here in Britain to evaluate attitudes towards Israel and the Jewish people. And what you're coming out with is, and what you're saying is shocking and also extremely disturbing, particularly for us Christians who have a love and passion for Israel and the Jewish people and hate seeing this rise of Jew hatred because we know where it will lead. But in your opinion, if these opinions against the Jewish people continue, what is the consequences, would you say?
The consequences, First of all, I'll just say to you, I'm writing the Jewish issue is one of the some other issues I'm going to write about. But what is the consequence? The consequence is very one. I mean, very simple. What we have today is like a BDS movement, for example, against Israel, boycott, divestment, sanction against Israel, which is gaining ground across Europe and in the United States, and especially in the intellectual circles, in the left circles, and in the educated circles. And what happens is very simple. If it becomes more and more successful, and if it continues to gather steam the way it has been for the last few years, it will end up in results on the ground, which means Israel will not be able to trade with the rest of the world, or with most of the rest of the world, or at least with the European and American market. When that happens, Israel will be suffocated. I mean, you cannot have trade, you cannot sell anything, you cannot buy anything. And guess what happens to a country that is under such a condition? We have seen it in South Africa. That country has ended. And while South Africa did not have really a reason to exist, it was basically a racist thing. Israel is not a racist thing. It's one country in the world, only one, for the Jews, who have been suffering for 2,000 years, murder, pogrom, slaughter, and they have come to their ancient land, If we believe in human rights, this is the first tribe on the planet we have to support, not the last one, or the no one, or the only one that's not. But if they succeed, and BDS succeeds, and nobody's selling anything in Israel, and of course nobody's going to sell any arms to Israel, and everybody is going to strengthen the people around Israel, the countries around Israel that are planning for decades to sink the whole country, all the people of the country, all the Jews, into the sea. And this is a reality, I can tell you. It's not like I pick it up from nowhere. I know what the people think over there. If that's going to end, what's going to happen? Israel will be a state in the past. Israel will no longer exist. The Jews will either be slaughtered right there, or they'll have to board on planes or whatever, some other ways to try to run away from a sinking ship. This is what the world wants. This is what the educated world wants. And it has power, the educated world. And in your churches, when your youngsters tell me free Palestine, when I ask them where Palestine is, and they can't even tell me where it is on the map, it's in your world there is a problem too. And if it came to your world, to the evangelical churches, guess how strong it is outside of the evangelical churches. The poison is huge. We killed 1/3 of the Jewish people just in last century. And the world was quiet then. Nobody helped them. Britain didn't help its Jews. Not the Jews, The Jews who came to Palestine, they arrested them, sent them, to camps in Cyprus. They limited the number of Jews basically to almost nothing. The Jews, the ones who were capable or whatever, miraculously, were able to run away from Auschwitz. The British government stopped them. The world then did not want, even America did not want any Jewish refugee. So we saw the educated intellectual world in Germany, don't you forget ever. Before the Holocaust, it was a light hand of the nation. It was one of the most respected, the most intelligent, the most sophisticated countries on earth. Germany. And then it turned into the biggest animal, the most brutal animal. And what we see here now also, the most educated people who are supposed to be standing on the exactly opposite side of the camp. The most educated are the biggest enemies of Israel and of the Jews, exactly like last century.
Frightening. We're down to the last 3 minutes of the programme, Tuvia. I can certainly do another programme with you. But can you share with us how we fight back?
Okay, and this, I'm really sorry to disappoint you. My job, I was going to be a rabbi, but I am not. I'm a journalist. I'm an artist. My job is, I'm not an activist. I really don't believe that journalism should be an activism, which has become so popular, especially on the left liberal part. You know, they don't tell you the truth, they just tell you, they preach to you,
yep.
They educate you what to think. You know, like they have to tell you that Israel is bad, for example. No, this is not my job. My job is to find the facts, you know, and put them down on the paper or on the screen or whatever it is. My job is not to find a solution. There are enough people, you know, leaders in many communities, you know, and it's their jobs, or the normal people from grassroots, it's the people's job to fight back. My job is to find the facts. So I'm not gonna say what should be done. I'm gonna tell you, this is what happens. You can prove it. I have it videoed, I have it recorded. And if you open your eyes, you'll find it. If you live here in Britain, all you have to do is open your eyes and see what's going on around you. And you'll find it, and you'll see it. It doesn't require a genius. Even here in Great Britain, it's not so great anymore. And you can tell if you are willing to open your eyes. So, and I'm willing to help you open your eyes. But that's it. What should be done is up to you, up to him, up to her, up to the rest of the world. It's not up to me. And I will stick to that principle. Thank you very much.
Tuvia, I just want to thank you so much for being my guest, and thank you for the books that you write, and thank you for explaining, sadly, the true state of our societies that have moved so much away from their Judeo-Christian foundation and heritage, that unfortunately the Jewish people are the light unto the nations, and Israel is a beacon of liberty in the Middle East and for the rest of the world. And sadly, if people can't see that, then they've got a problem.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and thank you for viewers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us.
And I just want to thank you for watching today's Middle East Report. It's been a special interview with Tuvia, and he has clearly marked out the situation that this nation faces with the rise of Jew hatred. And this is something that we can't contemplate. This is something that we have to stand up and fight against, the rise of Jew hatred, because if we don't, it'll come after us. So thank you for watching today's Middle East Report.
הגן עליה בעברת חסדך ופרוס עליה סוכת שלומך. אבינו אבינו שבשמיים צור ישראל וגואלו. צור ישראל וגואלו. קודשנו